Yeah, it's like it all
Changed for
comes like what you're
several.
saying, it all comes from the sky, the stars, the sun.
Hmm.
It's weird, and the
It's
sun
almost
is a
like
star
time was given to us by the celestial.
by the heavens.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back to the Out of the Box podcast. This is Jose and Steele, your host that gets to talk about outside the box ideas. That's something like you are interested in. Feel free to subscribe, hit the smash of the like button, and we'll get a lot of great content out for you. And so today, what we have going on is actually the topic of what is time, right? Still, so what is time?
What is
And
time?
and just to let you guys know, if you guys are interested in asking questions to a Catholic priest, we're gonna have a Catholic priest next week as a guest. So if you have any questions, please drop them down in the comment section so that way we can ask them for the next episode. But without further ado, Steel, let's kick it off with what is time. So,
Yeah.
what is your concept of time, man?
What is my concept of time? All right, well, I guess personally, what my concept of time is, what I think time is, I'm not sure. Like I'm wondering because I go back and forth on it a lot. I'm like, is time real or is it just some man-made
Created.
construct, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, kind of like what we were talking about before we started the show is that, kind of like the ancient times when they used, the sun and, some sort of,
Mm,
triangle or something to see like whenever the sun moved, what time of the day was. I
right,
think
exactly.
that's when we started getting our perspective or, our idea of time, and I think throughout, ages and generations, people have had different ideas of time. I think because in the Bible it said people lived to like 1,000, but I don't know what reference did they have, like did they and there you
Yeah.
go, still kind of pulled up kind of what people
Yeah.
used to use
The
before to kind of
sundials.
measure time.
Well, even like
Yeah.
Stonehenge, like what is that? There's a huge mystery around that too, right? Like was
Oh
that
yeah.
used for measuring the sun, falling in certain ways? I mean, yeah, there's that sundial you were talking about.
And I guess why did humans want to create the idea of time in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
where did
Like
it
why
come from?
was it so important for our ancestors to have a conception of time?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, the first reason I can think of, and this reason is just based on my biased approach because I've obviously grown up with time always existing. The function of time is it's a measurement. It's a measurement. Technically, I guess, like you were saying with the sundial, it originated with the measurement of the sun, which, if you break that down philosophically, the sun is a light source coming from the sky that's casting these black things we call shadows in a certain pattern every single day, what we call days, at, I guess, well, the thing is, it's not exactly perfectly equal, but the sundial that it's based on makes it appear as if it were equal, right? Each day, because the shadow moves in a consistent pattern. So, in that sense, it measures a shadow moving on an object made of stone. So when you break it down to the most abstract or concrete concepts, I guess, then it's like, okay, that's kind of weird. But then, of course, now me and you can say we use time to measure, um, I guess, measure change. Like Aristotle, I think said like time is a measurement of change. Because I was just pulling up that earlier, actually, just to refresh. Um, it's a measurement of change, right? A change in shadows, a change in us moving around. Like we have work schedules. You have a schedule each week that we go by. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes why does time fly faster sometimes when we're having fun, and then
Right.
slower when we're not, or doing
This
some
is
sort of work that we don't want to do, or
that's
we're
weird.
having to read forcefully. You know, I think that's one of the things I think Einstein was thinking about, the
Yeah.
idea of relativity, that sometimes, for one person, time is passing relatively, but for, very faster for others, like very slowly. And I think, that concept really fascinates me because it makes me think like, well, how does time work then? Is it just a concept in your head? Um, because I've thought about this idea that how did people figure out a year had 365 days?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
did people figure
Yeah.
out? I guess they just studied the stars, the whole year, or
Yeah,
they
it's like it all
maybe for
comes like what you're
several.
saying, it all comes from the sky, the stars, the sun.
Mm,
It's weird. And the
it's
sun
almost
is a
like
star
time was given to us by the celestial
by the heavens.
bodies, right? Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? Like if you
Yeah.
think about it,
If you believe in
time was
God, it's
given
like
to by the.
a gift from God in some way, I guess you could
Mm,
say. If you're a physicist, you're
yeah,
like it's a gift from the stars from because the sun is a star. But it's like I've wrestled with that too, what you're saying. I like what you're saying about like, is it all just in my mind? Because if you really break it down like we did earlier, it's just a shadow, it's just shadows moving in certain patterns each what we call days. And I too, I'm like, yeah, like what you're saying, like how the hell did we figure out there's 365 days in a year? Did we create that? But then there's seasons. There's winter, there's summer, there's spring, and that's a consistent pattern.
yeah,
And the
that's true.
year
You
is a
know that,
rough
oh,
measurement
here
of that.
December, this is when. But you know how people say, oh, well, December or the cold came in late this year or something, or it came too early.
Yeah.
There's fluctuations, and
Well, we
you
depend on
know,
time. Like you said, we depend on time to be on time to things. We don't want to be late. We don't want to be, we use it
mhm,
even though it may not be real.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, people have, probably developed ways of sending satellites into space to measure where we're actually going within the sun's, perimeter, like circumference. And so that's maybe how we've been able to pinpoint a little bit deeper, the tilt of the earth and, all of that information that, we get taught in school. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing. I mean, like you said, a lot of these measurements are relative. How do we know that time is not relative either? And
Yeah.
if it is relative, then that just opens a lot of doors because thinking about parallel universes or you know time holes, or black holes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Time, fluctuates and changes in those areas. Like,
Yeah.
the movie Interstellar, right?
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
when they went to a different planet, time just moved slower there, but it was like a second there or a couple minutes there was like 10 years back at home. And that idea of like time being different. So does it also depend on you know, the mass
Yeah.
the mass
Yeah.
of
That's
the Earth.
actually that's actually what you're saying from Interstellar is scientifically accurate. Gravitational field curves space and time. So in some sense, gravity, the stronger the gravity, then it can slow down time. So gravity affects time in some way. Now, isn't that
Mhm.
weird? So it depends. So that means like if you're in a certain area in space, time can flow differently, slower or faster.
Yeah.
It kind of ties
It
back into what you were saying earlier about sometimes time seems like it's going by slower or faster.
mhm.
It's weird.
I think we had talked about this before, right? Where they had, those clocks that, are super precise.
Yes, I
They
was gonna because you made me think of that the atomic clocks. Yeah,
atomic clocks that,
yeah,
they're precise to the point, they click the same way. And then, they took one out into
yeah.
space and it was just like slightly off,
It
like it
was
started
slightly off.
changing a
Yeah.
little bit.
So we know
And
that time
so
is different on Earth compared to
to
yeah.
space, even if it's just slightly.
Well,
That
dude,
is it,
yeah.
that's crazy.
It's crazy, right? Well, yeah, so that does mean time is relative, like what Einstein's theories say, and what you were saying earlier, like about that. But even time on another planet is different. Like I don't know which planet, I'm just throwing stuff out here, but I know on like some planets, a year is a different length. A day can be 3 days on another planet. One day on
Mhm.
Earth could be like 3 days on some other planet, right? So that really is weird too, actually. So our entire basis of time is based on what? The sun? But then on a different planet it's different, you know?
Yeah, it's relative to our current situation.
To our star, to where our
Yeah,
star.
yeah. And it makes me think also, how some people they say they live longer in different parts of the world. I don't know if the the type of gravity that they're, perceiving in that specific area, just causes their life to be longer, not necessarily because of what they eat, but maybe because, of where they're located. I think it's Okinawans are actually the the kind of population with the most centurions, where people, pass the age of 100, and so it's very
Yeah.
common. Of course, that right now there's been a lot of changes, a lot of commercialism coming into those areas, and so we can definitely pinpoint a lot of food and, preservatives and processed food that's been coming in that has lowered the life expectancy. But it makes me think as well, like, could it be also the location where you live, that time just in within the earth, the time might change differently. Like, there's still the question of the Bermuda Triangle.
Bermuda
Like,
Triangle,
does
yeah, that's a really
does that just time just change there too, or
yeah,
like it just
why?
accelerates
Yeah.
time, and you just die instantly because the time accelerates to a point where you just become super old, and when you try to fly out of the triangle, you're already dead
Yeah, because there's
or
there's there's
something.
like people keep disappearing there and they don't come back, as from what I hear. So it's like, what does that even mean? You know, some people say, "Oh, is it a portal?" Without getting too far off topic, but like, like what if like time just stops? They're just frozen forever. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a crazy mystery, man.
And I'm pretty sure the government has
Yeah, they
you
might know.
know
Who knows?
tapped into it. Yeah, they probably know what's going on there.
Yeah, don't want to cause mass hysteria.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
I can see both sides, but dude, there's one other thing I wanted to tap into because I know me and you going to St. Mary's University, our core curriculum was philosophy, and I remember something. I think it was something. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was something Aristotle said about time. He said something like, "We don't know what the present is. The present doesn't really exist because the present has to be between the past and the future." I read this somewhere. I want to say it was Aristotle, but I can't honestly remember. But it was something like
Oh,
the past is just made of our memories, which technically memories, they no longer exist because they happened in the past. And also the future, which doesn't exist yet. It's just our imagination of what we think will happen. So where's the
yeah.
present? Like when you cut a line in half and then you keep cutting it infinitely, it's like that's the present. Like, where's the present? The past is here.
It,
Where is the
yeah.
present? It's like it's everywhere. What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's almost like the idea, and I always revert back to the idea of the molecules, like the atoms and the nucleus in the center, but the electrons are just flying out. You can only measure the electrons at a specific space and time, you know? And so I think it's, really interesting that you say that there is no present moment, right? Because we're always constantly moving through time, whether that be, probably our consciousness is constantly in motion, you know? And it makes me think, what happens when we're looking at the TV, right? When you just like zone out completely, and time, just feels like, it's not time just feels like it slows down or something. I don't know,
Yeah, yeah.
right? In those moments, your consciousness, I guess, is perceiving time in a different way.
Right. What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe time is just consciousness being aware of of movement.
Well, dude, even like substances can alter the way we perceive time. Like alcohol, people get blackouts when they drink too much alcohol. So
Yeah,
they
definitely.
miss, there's periods of time that literally go missing in their perception, like you're saying, their conscious perception of time. Or if someone smokes marijuana, for example, like marijuana affects time, it can slow down time. So it's like,
Yeah.
what is that? Why? Why does that happen? So like the way our brain physically perceives reality through our five senses. anything that alters our brain can alter the way we perceive time is going fast or slow. So it's like
Mm,
even our perception of time is flawed in some way. Like the sun is flawed because on other planets, you know, the shadow patterns are different. So days are one day could be 3 days. And then our perception. And there's even like I remember one of our friends told us there's even a millisecond delay between our the processing the stimuli going inside our eyes and then being processed by our brain and then us perceiving it. There's like a millisecond delay because that takes time itself. So there's like a millisecond delay of reality for us,
mm.
I guess, in some way.
It
You know?
makes me think of that scene from Percy Jackson in the
Oh, yeah.
Olympians where they go into that hotel where it's like enchanted and people are like playing in Las Vegas and one guy thinks like it's still 1971 or something like that like you know people can correct me but he thinks like he's pretty much stuck in time stuck in time in that portal but they're like no it's like so many years have passed and he still thinks like he's
He still
in
thinks
that
he's
past year and
yeah,
so
that's weird.
it makes me think like sometimes how time sometimes flies faster because sometimes I think one of the issues that we have in modern society is, when we get to the end of the day, we say like, I wish I had more time.
Yep, I've been doing that more and more lately.
That is crazy. That is crazy because a lot of people accomplish a lot of things within the 18 hours or 16, 17 hours that they're awake. And so it makes me think like, yeah, I mean, what what how does time fly? Like why is it flying so fast? And
Yeah,
is it because we're just over putting like information, like overdriving our brains with things
mm.
that, just time flies or
No,
that we're overdriving our brain to the point where we need more times to zone out. And so those moments of zoning out,
yeah. What was that?
cause breaks in our time of the day.
I read somewhere that like I can't remember which way it was. That reminds me. When the brain processes things faster, like I guess when you're on a stimulant that makes your brain work faster, I think it was something like time slows down because your brain is processing things faster, so more things are coming in. So it's like slowing down your perception of time. But I can't remember if it was that or if it was the other way around.
Mm.
I want to say that's what it
It's
was. I'd
like
have to look that
it's
up
like
though.
that it's like that movie where, this guy takes a pill, right? He takes a pill and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden he has this rush of like his neurons just
Limitless.
totally like and he's thinking like super fast, he
Yeah.
can like see things and whatever. And
It
yeah, I
slows it
guess, his perception of time must change for
down.
sure.
Well, another thing you said about like about time, that guy being stuck and stuff like that. Like when there's been experiments done like where someone was like in a room and they didn't have any like exposure to lights or anything, any clocks or anything, and their perception of time became flawed after a while. Like they started perceiving minutes as hours and stuff like that because they had nothing to go off of. So it's like I'm wondering because what you're saying, you're like, why is that? Why does time go by slower or faster? Well, maybe like when we're bored, time goes by slower because we're just sitting there doing nothing. So we have nothing to perceive as change. Because at the beginning of the podcast, we were
Yeah.
talking about maybe time has changed, something like
Our
Aristotle said.
consciousness is not being
Yeah.
distracted by
But when we're
something.
busy, that's why people say, oh, I
Mm,
wish I had more time in the day because they're so damn busy all the time that it just goes by so fast because there's so much changes happening throughout their whole day.
mm,
Like me, these
yeah.
past like 2 months, it's like nonstop, nonstop. And so it goes by so much faster. Do you think that could be it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think we're just constantly running through life, and we're not we're sprinting and not thinking about the marathon. And so I think I think that's certainly like with the acceleration of technology and the acceleration of ways to communicate, ways to consume information. That's one of the things I was thinking about while I was driving.
But
The idea of how we're constantly consuming things. So we're always thinking about, oh, how to do this, when to do this, why this is important. and we're hearing news, we're hearing people, we're hearing comments. And so our mind is constantly thinking, it's always in motion. But since it's always in motion, there's no time to slow down. I think that's why the movements of like mindfulness and, find your present moment, and
Yeah.
even though like kind of like how we talked about, I definitely think that's a really good point that, there's never a present moment. But, I think what they're trying to say is, slow down your consciousness to not think of other things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that maybe that's
So
what
that
meditation is.
time moves slower. So that
Right.
time moves slower, and you have more time to breathe, more time to really organize your thoughts. Because if we're always consuming and throwing stuff in, it's almost like you know dishes, right? Like if you keep like eating, if you keep eating, you still have more dishes, and so you have to organize those dishes, wash them, put them away, right? But if you are mindful about what you eat, okay, I'm just gonna eat this plate right now. It's only gonna be one plate. I wash it, I clean it, it's done, right? But I think we're constantly consuming stuff, that we don't have to time to organize and clean all that information that we consume throughout the day so that we can put it back in its place, right? I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's a
That's an
pretty
interesting
interesting way
kinda
to put
like
it.
yeah, like a metaphor. Well, speaking of time, it is time.
It is time.
Hey,
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming in today. We really appreciate you listening to towards the end. If you're here, please leave a like, smash that like button. Also, smash the subscribe button and leave a comment to see what you thought. And also, don't forget to send in your questions about what you would like to ask a priest. We'll be having him next week on our podcast. So until next time, we will see you. Take care.